The blistering Arizona sun was a relentless adversary, a fiery eye that seemed to scrutinize Clara Vance as she stood on the parched earth of her newly acquired farm. Her inheritance, a bittersweet reminder of a life irrevocably altered, had brought her this solitude, this endless expanse of red dust and scrub brush near the sleepy, sun-baked town of Tumbleweed Creek. The dilapidated farmhouse, a skeletal silhouette against the vast, empty sky, offered little comfort. Clara, a woman once defined by the quiet order of library stacks in Ohio, now found herself grappling with the raw, untamed chaos of the desert. She had fled a profound grief, a void in her life that no book could fill. Here, amidst the pervasive silence broken only by the mournful calls of unseen birds, she hoped to bury her past, or perhaps simply outrun it. Weeks dissolved into a grueling routine of physical labor. Her hands, once accustomed to delicate paper, were now raw and calloused, a testament to her desperate struggle to tame the wild plot of land. She patched leaks in the warped wooden roof, battled stubborn mesquite bushes, and waged a futile war against the fine, ubiquitous dust that permeated everything. One sweltering afternoon, the heat shimmering off the ground in wavy distortions, Clara was excavating around an old, crumbling stone well. Her shovel, a heavy, unwieldy tool in her unaccustomed grip, hit something with a dull thud. Not rock, but something unnervingly different. As she dug deeper, the desert floor reluctantly yielded its secret, a skeletal hand emerging from the dry earth, its bone-white fingers still clutching a small, leather-bound map. A jolt, colder than any desert night, shot through her. The skeletal remains, remarkably preserved by the arid climate, were clearly human, the tattered remnants of clothing suggesting an age long past. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she unfurled the brittle map. Crude, faded ink outlined a series of winding trails and indistinct landmarks, culminating in 2 words scrawled almost illegibly: Stone's Silver Mine. The name, Jedediah Stone, a recluse prospector whispered about in hushed tones in Tumbleweed Creek, echoed in her mind. This wasn't just a map. It was a tangible link to a forgotten past, a legend of immense wealth that had vanished with its discoverer decades ago, now lying literally at her feet. The discovery of the skeleton and the map consumed Clara. Sleep became a forgotten luxury, replaced by endless hours hunched over the fragile document, its cryptic markings illuminated by the flickering, unsteady glow of an oil lamp. The magnitude of her find was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the quiet, predictable life she had known. Tumbleweed Creek, a cluster of weathered, clapboard buildings baking under the relentless sun, was her only connection to any kind of human history. Driven by a desperate need for answers, she ventured into town, the map carefully concealed in her worn satchel. Her first stop was the sheriff's office, a small, dusty room that smelled faintly of old leather and stale coffee. Sheriff Brody, a man whose face was etched with the lines of years spent in the sun, listened to her story with a weary skepticism that slowly gave way to a grudging interest when she produced the map and spoke Jedediah Stone's name. Old Jedediah, he mused, a faint memory stirring in his eyes. He was a quiet one. Talked of silver, but then just vanished. Folks assumed he just moved on. Brody's initial dismissal of prospector's folly softened, replaced by a subtle shift in his demeanor, a flicker of professional curiosity. He advised caution, a warning that echoed the desert's own unforgiving nature. Seeking more context, Clara found herself drawn to the town's general store, a repository of both goods and gossip. Here she met Maria Rodriguez, a woman with a kind smile and eyes that held the wisdom of generations. Maria, with her rich knowledge of local lore, was an unexpected beacon. Her grandfather, she revealed, had known Jedediah Stone well. He was A driven man, Jedediah, Maria recounted, her voice soft, obsessed with that mine. Swore it was the biggest strike in these parts, but there were others, envious eyes. Maria's words painted a vivid picture of a time when the lure of silver could drive men to desperation, and worse. She spoke of rival prospectors, of whispers of Jedediah's growing paranoia, and a cloud of suspicion that had always hung over his disappearance. Maria's warnings were not just about the harsh elements, but about the enduring greed that permeated the very dust of the desert. Clara began to understand that Jedediah's death was no simple disappearance. It was a puzzle, a human drama buried beneath decades of sand. And the map wasn't just a guide to a mine, but a key to uncovering a hidden injustice. Armed with Maria's insights and Sheriff Brody's tacit approval, Clara began the arduous task of following Jedediah's map. The desert, under the unforgiving gaze of the sun, was a cruel deceiver. A seemingly endless maze of identical canyons, sun-baked mesas, and treacherous arroyos. Her old sedan, a relic of her former life, was hopelessly ill-suited for the rugged terrain. It frequently bottomed out, got stuck in soft sand, or simply sputtered to a halt, leaving Clara stranded for hours, sometimes days, under the vast, indifferent sky. Blistering heat gave way to bone-chilling nights, and the constant threat of rattlesnakes and scorpions added another layer of primal fear. Her carefully rationed provisions dwindled, and thirst became a nagging, debilitating companion, a constant ache at the back of her throat. Yet with every struggle, Clara's resolve hardened. Sheriff Brody, seeing her unwavering determination, and perhaps a reflection of Jedediah's own stubborn spirit, began to offer more direct support. He provided her with a sturdy pickaxe, practical advice on navigating the desert by the sun and stars, and even a worn canteen. "This desert respects persistence, ma'am," he'd gruffly tell her, a rare smile creasing his weathered face. Maria, too, became an anchor. She packed Clara with dried jerky and refillable water skins, teaching her about identifying edible desert plants and the subtle, life-saving signs of impending weather changes. Their quiet friendship, born out of shared concern and a growing respect, became a vital emotional lifeline for Clara in her profound solitude. The physical demands pushed Clara to her absolute limits, testing her endurance and courage. She faced daunting rockfalls that blocked her path, confusing landmarks that seemed to shift with the light, and the gnawing doubt that Jedediah's map was nothing more than a cruel, elaborate hoax. But each small victory, recognizing a specific, gnarled mesquite tree marked on the map, finding a tiny hidden spring where no water should be, ignited a flicker of hope, rekindling her determination. This journey was no longer just about finding silver, it was about proving something to herself, about forging a new identity from the ashes of her past, transforming her grief into resilience. She wasn't just following a map, she was following a primal urge for purpose and survival. As Clara closed in on the mine's probable location, a new, far more insidious obstacle emerged from the dust. Other prospectors. The faint whispers of Jedediah Stone's lost mine, carried on the desert wind, had begun to draw opportunistic figures to the area. Among them was Silas Blackwood, a grizzled, imposing man with eyes like flint and a reputation for ruthlessness that preceded him. He and his two rough-hewn companions, men with hard faces and even harder intentions, began to shadow Clara's every move. Their presence was a constant, chilling reminder that the desert was a brutal arena, where greed could turn men into predators. Blackwood was cunning, a master of intimidation. He subtly sabotaged her equipment, leaving her tools dull or her water canteen punctured. He spread insidious rumors about her mental state in Tumbleweed Creek, hoping to isolate her further. He saw her as an easy mark, a solitary woman, seemingly naive and out of her depth, encroaching on what he considered his rightful territory. The tension reached a fever pitch one afternoon when Blackwood, his face a mask of simmering fury, directly confronted Clara. He blocked her path with his horse, demanding to see her map, his hand hovering menacingly near the revolver on his hip. He openly hinted at violence, his words a chilling echo of Maria's warnings about the cutthroat nature of the Old West. Clara, though paralyzed by fear, stood her ground, fueled by a defiant strength she hadn't known she possessed. Just as the situation teetered on the brink, the distant drone of an engine cut through the desert silence. Sheriff Brody's patrol vehicle appeared on the horizon, a welcome sight that instilled a crucial moment of hesitation in Blackwood. Brody, increasingly suspicious of Blackwood's aggressive posturing, had been making more frequent patrols in the area. He couldn't arrest Blackwood without concrete proof, but his watchful eye provided a vital deterrent, disrupting Blackwood's predatory tactics. Meanwhile, Maria, using her extensive network in Tumbleweed Creek, had been quietly gathering intelligence on Blackwood's past, uncovering unsavory dealings and a history of bullying weaker prospectors. Clara felt the full, unforgiving weight of the desert's harsh justice, realizing that finding the mine was only half the battle. Securing it from those who would take it by force might prove to be the greater struggle. After what felt like an eternity, a relentless push fueled by desperate hope and the chilling pressure from Blackwood, Clara finally saw it. Tucked away in a secluded, overgrown canyon, a place the desert had jealously guarded for decades, was a small, crudely shored-up mine shaft. It was almost swallowed by time, hidden beneath a thicket of stubborn scrub brush and sun-baked rock. The entrance, partially collapsed but undeniably discernible, perfectly matched the final faded markings on Jedediah's map. A wave of profound exhilaration, a burst of pure triumph washed over her, mingled with an almost spiritual sense of awe. This wasn't just a mine. It was a silent, weathered testament to Jedediah's life, his solitary struggle against the unforgiving land, and his ultimately tragic hidden legacy. But the moment of triumph was fleeting, brutally shattered by the desert's harsh reality. The rhythmic thud of horses' hooves on the dry ground, followed by the crunch of heavy boots on gravel, announced their unwelcome presence. Silas Blackwood and his two enforcers emerged from the deep shadows of the canyon, their faces grim, hardened. By greed, their intentions chillingly clear. A tense, loaded silence descended upon the small clearing, thick with unspoken threats. Blackwood's eyes, devoid of mercy, fixed first on Clara, a possessive glint in their depths, then shifted hungrily to the mine entrance, the very thing he had relentlessly pursued. Just as the volatile situation threatened to erupt into raw violence, a distinct, reassuring hum cut through the oppressive quiet, the sound of a vehicle approaching. Sheriff Brody, having tracked Blackwood's movements with quiet determination, his suspicions solidified by Maria's earlier insights into Blackwood's history, emerged from the dust cloud, his presence a stark, undeniable symbol of the law's reach, even in this wild frontier. The confrontation that followed was raw and charged, echoing the brutal conflicts of the Old West. Blackwood, cornered and exposed, lashed out, his words a desperate attempt to regain control. But the sheriff's calm, unwavering demeanor, combined with the subtle but damning evidence Clara presented, the map, the location, the skeleton's presence, and Maria's detailed corroboration of Blackwood's shady past dealings with Jedediah, slowly broke his resolve. Under the mounting pressure, Blackwood, his voice laced with bitter resentment, finally confessed to a past dispute with Jedediah over a previous claim. He admitted to being the one who had spread the rumors about Jedediah's disappearance, effectively discouraging others from searching, a cynical tactic to secure the mine for himself. While he didn't explicitly confess to murder, His words, coupled with the sheriff's findings and the context of Jedediah's fate, strongly implicated him. The sheriff's timely intervention, alongside the growing body of evidence, led to Blackwood's swift and decisive arrest. His reign of intimidation brought to an end. The mine, now secured and free from the shadow of Blackwood's greed, held a modest but significant vein of silver, enough to offer Clara a true, fresh start, a chance to rebuild her life on new terms. Yet the true treasure wasn't the gleaming metal. Standing amidst the dust of the Arizona desert, under the vast open sky, Clara Vance, once a grieving librarian lost in her past, was now a survivor, a discoverer, and a woman who had confronted her deepest fears. She had found immense resilience within herself. Her arduous journey had not only brought a long-awaited closure to Jedediah's tragic story, but had also allowed her to unearth a profound, transformative understanding of herself. Her journey wasn't about escaping the past, but facing it head-on, transforming its painful lessons into a solid, unwavering foundation for a truly authentic and meaningful future in a land that had tested her limits and ultimately forged her anew.